When people are coming up to her saying, you're such an inspiration. I love you so much. And I love your main character, Annabelle, so much. She's so powerful. She's so confident. I'm going to follow my dreams and do what Annabelle does. And Tessa feels, as I think many authors feel, I certainly do, a responsibility, a great responsibility to people readers who will confess to you or tell you their dreams or ask for advice.
Yes.
I love that. I completely embrace that. But on the other hand, I write fiction. I write hopes. I write desires. I write dreams.
Yes.
But I'm not writing an instruction book for life. But if readers take from that the idea, at the end of the book, I want you to feel like, yeah, that's exactly what should have happened. And I have the power to do that from my own life.
Absolutely.
As well. Then I would, that's what I want. I want you to close the book and think, yes, 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 that is a perfect ending.
This is Storied Account with Jen Jumba. In conversations with writers, something magical happens. And as readers, we begin to see them as human beings and not just the name on the spine of a book. And my hope is through these conversations, when you learn about their craft and them as a person, you'll become fiercely loyal and want to read their current book, entire backlist, any future book, any book that they blurb. And when you see their name, you'll want to support them not only as incredible storytellers, but also as the thoughtful individuals you have come to know. My guest today is Hank Phillippi Ryan, and here is a brief introduction. Hank Phillippi Ryan is the USA Today best-selling author of 16 psychological thrillers, winning the most prestigious awards in the genre, 5 Agathas, 5 Anthonys, and the coveted Mary Higgins Clark Award. She's also the on-air investigative reporter for Boston's WHDH-TV and has won an unprecedented 37 Emmy Awards, as well as dozens more honors for her groundbreaking journalism and true crime stories. Her work has changed laws, changed lives, and resulted in millions of dollars in refunds and restitution for consumers. In her second career as a writer, national book critics call her a superb and gifted storyteller and a master of creating suspenseful stories. She is the past president of National Sisters in Crime and is now on the board of International Thriller Writers. She lives in Massachusetts with her husband, a nationally renowned criminal defense and civil rights attorney. And her newest book is a cross-country cat and mouse chase. All This Could Be Yours from Minotaur Books, and an instant USA Today bestseller. People magazine called it a nail-biting thriller, and the rave-starred review from Library Journal says should be on everyone's reading list. And I'm so lucky because I've known Hank for several years and have been delighted to read each of the stories she publishes and see her shine in her ability to write a story that keeps you engaged from the minute you read the first line and thinking about what happened long after that last line. As you've heard, Hank has won so many awards and at the same time is one of the most generous souls you will ever meet. For me, whenever I have a conversation with Hank, she's never distracted, and I feel as if I'm the only person in the room, and this is a true gift. She frequently encourages her peers in the writing community and those of us who might be writer adjacent. Hank, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about your stunning new book, All This Could Be Yours.
Thank you. That introduction was so kind and so lovely. You bring tears to my eyes. I love writer adjacent. You and I have known each other from moment one, and I am incredibly grateful for all you have done for me and for other authors. Thank you.
Likewise. I mean, you're why I'm a librarian, and being able to talk to the people whose books sit on my shelf is a very special thing. So I always appreciate you taking time. So as a librarian, I'm frequently asked, I'm in the mood for a good book. What would you recommend? And besides me always handing them one of yours, right? This person says, well, I'm in the mood for a cat and mouse thriller, from somebody who's a multiple award winner. So we'll typically recommend All This Could Be Yours. Do you want to do the book talk portion of a little intro to the book you're handing to that customer?
Oh, that's a good idea. I love that. And do people really come in and ask you for cat and mouse chases? They do. That's so interesting.
They do, or they'll say, I don't want any blood and gore, or I want a happy ending, or, Yeah, it's amazing what people say, and it's important to know why they read, right? Character, story, setting, or language. It's also important to know what they're in the mood for, because just because I like something doesn't necessarily mean that person standing in front of me will. But when you ask all the right questions and you understand what they're looking for, and some people are like, I want something fast paced. I'm like, well, prepare to have breakfast for dinner because
Exactly, because that's exactly what I'm going for in my books. I want you to miss your stop on the bus because you just want to read one more chapter and the time goes away and the walls fall away and you're completely immersed. It's interesting. Your question is so fascinating because Harlan Coben once told me to write the kind of book you love to read, and that when that passion comes through on the page and the readers will grasp that and understand it and be immersed in the story as well. So I don't like graphic sex or violence or inappropriate language in books. So I just don't put that in mine. What I
right.
do love is gaslighting and manipulation and deception and a little bit of murder. My books, the DNA of my books is sort of a smart, strong woman who gets the rug pulled out from under her. And in the end, she needs to get her power back. So they're about truth and justice, if that sounds highfalutin, and it's a lot about empowerment. In All This Could Be Yours, which thank you for bringing up. That was an instant USA Today.
Instant, yes. And I think we should say it's in its second printing, which is within the first 3 weeks of being published, is amazing. So congratulations again.
Thank you. I was alone in a hotel room on book tour when I heard the news, and I just let out this holler. And then I thought, oh, somebody in the next room is going to think something really bad is happening. But I'm really thrilled and really delighted about it. I think one of the reasons, knock on wood, it's so relatable to people is that the main character, Tessa Calloway, is a person so much like so many of us. She's a woman. She's good. She's a good person. She
Mhm.
loves her family. She loves her husband. She loves her children. She kind of likes her job, but not totally.
Yeah,
And she has a dream. She has something that she's always wanted to do. And she begins to realize, this is page one, no spoilers,
right.
that she's not living her life to the fullest, that she has one life and she's not living it to the fullest. So bottom line, your elevator pitch, as you're talking about, is that on page one of the book, Tessa Calloway realizes that she's had it with the corporate world, and live on Instagram, she quits. She says, I'm tired of being ignored. I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of being the one that has the good ideas and then everybody else takes credit for them. And I am going to leave this corporate world and follow my dreams and write a novel. So as the book opens, chapter 1, 3 years later, Tessa's dreams have come true. She's written not only a novel, but a surprise best-selling, blockbuster best-selling novel. And she is sent on a national book tour, a glamorous national fabulous book tour by her happy, happy publisher, where she's met with adoring fans and long signing lines and, complete sellout crowds. But she begins to realize early on, while she's away from her home and family on this book tour, she begins to realize that she may have a stalker, or maybe several stalkers who are out to devastate her career and destroy the family that she's left back home. And what makes it even more terrifying as the scary events keep unfolding, what makes it more terrifying is that Tessa thinks that maybe it's her fault, because Tessa is hiding a secret that she made years ago, what seemed like a Faustian bargain, a real deal with the devil. And that possibly right now, those stalkers know about this and are about to reveal her devastating secret to the world, one that will ruin her life. So bottom line, what starts out as a glamorous, fabulous nationwide book tour turns into a deadly, dangerous cross-country cat and mouse chase with the author running for her life. So I've basically taken everything about book tour and just made it weaponized, scary and creepy. I've had author friends say they're glad they read All This Could Be Yours when they got back from tour, because it would have just creeped them out if they had read it on the road.
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of like the what to expect when you're expecting. My sister refused to read ahead of what was coming simply because didn't want to get freaked out. Like, you deal with what you have right then and there. And then when you're back home and you're safe, safe place.
Then you can indulge in the high stakes cat and mouse thriller fiction. I've heard this described. I've heard All This Could Be Yours described as a be careful what you wish for thriller. And that's exactly what this is.
Oh, without a doubt. And to your point, in the opening scene where she just has kind of had it, right? She's been on this, one life is kind of her mantra, right? Where she's, trying to decide, do I leave this career that, does not bring me joy, where I'm invisible, where I'm not empowered, right? The complete antithesis of a Hank Phillippi Ryan character. And so she has this mantra, one life. And then she, not only does she decide to just walk away from it, but she decides to live stream it, right? So there's that accountability piece because people saw you do it online and she had already had a following. So
Yes, and she has a following with the hashtag Moms with Dreams. So
yes,
people just like us who have realized that we have our one life and realize that we do have a dream. And the key is, will you be brave enough, courageous enough to follow your heart and follow your passion while you're trying to juggle your other responsibilities? Tessa is the sole breadwinner for her family, her 9-year-old and her 11-year-old and her husband, who I'm sure is lovely. But he's behaving a little wonkily while she is on the
yeah,
road. She begins to realize, well, let me put it this way. She's trying to be a mom and a wife by Zoom and by FaceTime, like long distance. And she begins to realize that her husband is sort of curating the video that he shows her on FaceTime and on Zoom. Why won't he show her the kids? And why won't he show her the house? And why won't he show her the neighbors that keep coming over? But she can't come home to find out what's going on, because if she doesn't stay on the road, if she doesn't sell books, their mortgage won't be paid and their kids won't be able to go to school and they won't have groceries. And so she's supporting her family from far away, a juggle that in some way every working woman with a family has on her own particular level and her own particular situation. So that's what makes Tessa, I think, so relatable. I mean, people talk about how much they love her and how much they root for her in this book, even though she has a deep, dark secret.
absolutely. I mean, she is a terrific character to see yourself in. And I think that's one of the things that makes your book special, is that it is so relatable. It's not something, this coveted spy that finds themselves, it's, these are things that we all face, right? That we're trying to juggle multiple things, and to take that risk is a little bit scary. But it's that whole, like, what if I fail, but what if you fly? And I think she empowers others to do the same, because in the book, throughout the book signings, people are coming up and saying, I quit my job because of you, because of what you did. Or, her main character, Annabelle, in her story, is also somebody that characters in your book, the customers gravitate towards.
Yes,
So
because I do think it's very tempting and very tantalizing to see someone be successful at following their dreams. It's inspirational to do that. And it happens to me in real life all the time. People come up to me and say, I know you didn't start writing fiction until later in your career. After 30 years as an investigative reporter, that's when I started writing, not when I was in my 20s.
yeah,
And I have had people come up to me and say, you know what, I'm going to quit my job and start writing a novel. And I'm like, do you have health insurance? I don't really see way by this idea of following your dream. So we all know that this is a juggle and this is a balance. And that's what Tessa Calloway feels in the novel as well, when people are coming up to her saying, you're such an inspiration. I love you so much. And I love your main character, Annabelle, so much. She's so powerful. She's so confident. I'm going to follow my dreams and do what Annabelle does. And Tessa feels, as I think many authors feel, I certainly do, a responsibility, a great responsibility, yes, to people who, right, readers who will confess to you or tell you their dreams or ask for advice. Yes. And I love that. I completely embrace that. But on the other hand, I write fiction. I write hopes. I write desires. I write dreams. Yes. But I'm not writing an instruction book for life. But if readers take from that, mm-hmm, the idea, at the end of the book, I want you to feel like, yeah, that's exactly what should have happened. And I have the power to do that from my own life. Absolutely. As well. Then I would, that's what I want. I want you to close the book and think, yes, 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 that is a perfect ending.
It reminds me this part of the conversation about a line in the book where, somebody comments, because running from a problem gives somebody else the power. So, I mean, it's such a great line. When you think about it, I'm struck with the fact that there's a difference between running from and moving towards, right? And I think that there's a distinct difference between the two.
I think one of the things that happens to us, to Tessa and to us in real life, is there's sometimes in our lives we have this moment of panic. What am I going to do? I don't have control of my life. The world is moving and I don't have any power to stop it or help it or move in the right direction. And, that's something that we all feel. And I think taking your power back, being empowered, sort of advocating for yourself, having agency in life is something that we can practice and something that we can actively think about. I mean, I just came back from 3 weeks on the road. I have to tell you that, I thought I was living my book. It was hilarious. I'm an author on book tour with a book called All This Could Be Yours, which is about an author on book tour with a book called All This.
It's a little meta. Yeah.
It was super meta, completely meta. And I laugh every time I think of that. But because I'm on tour with a book about a book tour, everything that happened to me on book tour, I saw through the eyes of Tessa Calloway and through the eyes of fiction. And I'd pull my suitcase at 4 a.m. through some airport that I didn't even know where I was half the time, sort of humming Magical Mystery Tour. Because how much fun is this to get, even though I'm starving and exhausted and have no idea what day it is or what time it is or where I am even. Truly, I don't know. I embrace it. I embrace it so much. And that's one of the things that was really important to me in the novel was Tessa, although she loves this book tour, and she embraces the readers and embraces the librarians and embraces the booksellers and embraces everybody and her publishers and her publicists and everyone. She's tired and she's cranky and she's homesick and she's worried about her family. But in the end, and during the time, she's consistently, actively grateful that she gets to do this. She's authentically grateful to her fans and to the readers and to the librarians and booksellers.
I know Constance had a starring role. That was terrific. Who you need somebody to trust. Who better than a librarian? I was like, nice touch.
That was just for you. I loved making librarians heroes in this book. It was really fun to write the library scenes. It's interesting when I think about it. Most of this book takes place in contemporary times, except for a couple of things about Tessa's childhood. But everything that takes place in contemporary times, every scene is either in an airport or an airplane or an Uber or a hotel or a library or a bookstore, just like real life, just like a real book tour. So readers who read All This Could Be Yours will know the real deal in every way about going on book tour. And I loved writing it that way. And also that sets up the cat and mouse chase, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does.
Going from city to city, it's clear that someone is following her because the same person being at an event in Scottsdale and in Denver and in Des Moines, that's something that doesn't generally happen. So what is going on?
It's a little bit unsettling, but I appreciate the behind the scenes because every time I've seen writers in person, you all are incredibly grateful, but realizing what comes before that you're not getting into your hotel and eating until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And you have a 3:30 wake up call because you've got to leave for the airport by 4:30. It boggles my mind because I don't see that. I just see this. So it makes me love you guys all that much more in terms of what you do, because book tour cannot be easy. And saying you don't know what city you're in or airport or
you don't, and that is no exaggeration. You absolutely do not know where you are. It's really funny. I mean, that you talk about medics asking you, are you grounded in time and place? What day it is, what city are you are? Those basic things we're supposed to know. And I will tell you that every author on book tour absolutely has no idea, and it's really so funny. But I do think the thing is that all of your fans and viewers and listeners, Jen, will have been to book events, will have been to the kinds of events at libraries and bookstores that Tessa goes to, where Tessa appears. And all of your listeners and viewers will have been in the audience of those places and have seen it from the reader's point of view. But I wanted to offer you a real inside authentic look at the author's point of view, especially in this weaponized version of Book Tour. When, for instance, the moderator at an event, after Tessa has spoken, says, does anyone have any questions? And we've all heard that a million times. But in Tessa's mind, that's terrifying, because is that going to be the moment that somebody who she doesn't even know who is, some stranger in the audience, raises their hand and asks the one question that will ruin Tessa's life? So that tightrope that she's walking every single minute of every single day to protect her reputation and her career and her family and her job and her livelihood, even her life, that domino is about to fall every single moment of the book.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you start your book off with an epigraph from Pythagoras, who I only knew as the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But he that says choices are the hinges of destiny. So I think it speaks to all the different choices that she's making, and the choice that she's made to go on tour, to be accessible, to open to Q&A, because some writers are like, nope, we curate the Q&A beforehand, and these are the questions I'm asked, or no questions, or my books are pre-signed. But you think about all the decisions that she's making along the way as a writer and then on tour, as to being so visible and being so seen, and then posting on social. I mean, there's a point where her publicist is like, post, or they're going to forget about you.
Yeah. That's very realistic. It's the post, or they will forget about you is really a powerful message that we all get. On the other hand, what comes from real life is, once I was at some airport and posted, here I am at gate D22, and I put this on Instagram, and my publicist emails me really quickly and says, what are you doing saying where you are? Why are you saying that you're in the Wichita airport at wherever I was? Gate D22, don't do that. And so that's another thing that you so wisely bring up that was so important in this novel, is that the post, or they'll forget about you. We're required, and we love, I'm not complaining in any way. I'm just telling you.
Absolutely.
Is that, I'm so grateful for social media to have us all be connected, that we each know what each other is doing and where we're going. And, the idea that you're listening to us on this podcast, you saw that on my webpage, or you saw that on Jen's webpage, or you saw that on social media. And I'm thrilled about that. Or the reason you come see me at the Poison Pen bookstore or at the Des Moines Library is because you've seen it on my website. You've seen it on my social media. You know where I am. You know where authors are, which is great and devoutly to be wished. And we encourage that. On the other hand, everybody knows where we are. And every place we go, there's an audience of strangers, an audience full of people who know way more about us than we know about them. And it's very disturbing if you start thinking about it in a scary, negative kind of way. I generally think about it in a wonderfully embracing, optimistic kind of way of, hooray, everybody is here. I love that. But, one wrong person in an audience can really ruin your life. So how do we all balance that necessity and that genuine, authentic desire to connect with readers? I mean, I have ducks in my backyard that come every
spring. Flo and Eddie. Yes.
Exactly. And that on Thanksgiving, I'm always going to complain because I don't know how to make gravy, and I just can't do that. But it, and that's funny, and that's fun. And at some point, Jen, you've had people come to your events, authors who have bodyguards, and they're try to be unobtrusive, the sort of bruiser-looking guys.
Yeah, the bruiser-looking guys with like the earpiece, like, really, or talking into their watch.
But, those authors are authentically terrified about the people who are trying to get too close to them. Or, as you say, the authors who do not have a signing line, who will not personalized books because they're just some sort of threat or some sort of fear or some sort of thing that we'll never know what is, that has invaded their lives and invaded their fame. And I, as a television reporter, I've been a television reporter for 43 years. I've
Started when you
wired
were
myself.
like,
Yeah, oh well, I've wired myself with hidden cameras and confronted corrupt politicians and chased down criminals and gone undercover and in disguise and fought true crime for 43 years. So I've been threatened and pushed down and yelled at and sued and stalked and followed home. And once I had my house was broken into because the burglar knew, according to the police, the burglar knew that I was live anchoring the news on TV. So I wasn't home. So he could break in because he knew I wasn't there. So that vulnerability, not only of me as a television reporter, but of every one of us as authors, that vulnerability is constantly present, not only for us, but for our family. We chose to hope to be in the
yes,
public eye. But our families did not choose to be in the public eye. And in All This Could Be Yours, Tessa realizes that her wonderful dream come true of this newfound fame may have put her family in danger. And how do you balance that?
absolutely. And that's where you introduce the term parasocial relationships, where, readers or fans feel like they know you. So it's that, you capture that duality, right? Like, it's nice to be able for people to know you and be able to relate to you and your fabulous gardener, like, when's spring coming? Because that's when Flo and Eddie come. I mean, those of us who follow you know that. But at the same time, there has to be a healthy distance. And at the same time, because things go viral so quickly and people film everything, that, let's say she's at an event and that dreaded question about her past comes out. How does she react? How does she handle it? And in this instant, cancel culture, I mean, you're trying to balance all of it. And I can't say that it sounds at all easy to be able to do.
It isn't easy first of all, let me just make it very, very clear. I feel really lucky to be in this position. I feel really lucky to have 16 best-selling novels. I feel really lucky to have almost finished book 17. Almost, I'm sure it'll just be fine. I feel really, really lucky to be here talking with you about this. But as with everything that's wonderful, there's a dark side of it. And that's what All This Could Be Yours is about, the joy and glories of reading and storytelling and book tour. And, the idea that you have a book that people love, there's just nothing better in the universe than that. But but the idea of people's behavior, of the one person who's going to make your life miserable, combined in this case, in Tessa's case, and All This Could Be Yours, combined with her guilt about a secret that she feels she needs to keep covered up. And so every moment of every day, she wonders if this is the day that the bubble is going to burst and she's going to be canceled and her life is going to be over. And how we deal with our own personal lives versus our professional lives, and the performance in the best of ways that we have to put on for the public, which I love and I enjoy that, the community.
Oh, it's palpable, and genuine.
Yeah, thank you. It is. I laugh every day about how marvelous it is. But again, it's a big responsibility. And one of the things that I looked into in this story, wanted to make sure that people were aware of, is, the knife edge financial edge that independent bookstores work on. How, sales or not sales of one event, something going wrong in one event, can ruin their financial week. Libraries these days are on such a knife edge of prosperity and of accessibility, and every reader loves libraries and relies on them. I would not be here without libraries. But again, the juggle that libraries have and the juggle that bookstores have is so important and so powerful. And one of the things that surprised me about writing this book, when I started to write All This Could Be Yours, I meant it to be a fast-paced, page-turning, cross-country cat and mouse chase. I don't plot, but I knew I had that, and I knew I had the secret, and I knew I had a Faustian bargain. And I didn't know any of the specifics, but I knew that was what the book was about. What I didn't know was that in the end, it was also going to turn out to be, not only a book for Lisa Jewell and Lisa Scottolini and Lisa Unger and Lisa Gardner, Lisa.
Oh yeah, all the Lisa and Hank.
And Hank, exactly.
Hank and the Lisas, whatever.
well, I embrace them all. It's amazing that they're all
Yes.
named, but those are my idols, and those are my comp titles. Those are the people. If you like those books, you'll love mine, and that's what I was going for. But what I wound up with, in addition to that, which really surprised me and sort of stopped me in my tracks, is that it turned out All This Could Be Yours also turned out to be kind of a love letter to booksellers and independent bookstores and libraries and librarians and readers and writers and anyone who loves storytelling. That's what this book is for. That's what this book is about. It's just a love letter to all of those places. And when I finished the book, I burst into tears because I realized that I had sort of allowed myself to plumb the depths of my own emotion about my gratitude for this book world, for this book community, for everyone that makes this book world happen. And I had just put that all on the page. The book is super personal,
beautiful,
and super meta, and it turned out to be way more than I had planned for it to be at the beginning. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful.
Yeah. Well, you just mentioned, you kind of just write, without kind of really knowing and realizing. And I think that to me is fascinating. And I think that comes across on the page that as a reader, I'm like, what's going to happen next? Have to turn the next page. And like you as a writer, do you find the same thing? Like you have to keep writing to know what these characters are going to do or how they're going to act?
That's so great. You are so exactly right. As always, it's so funny to hear you say this because that's what gets me to the computer every day, is that I have no idea what's going to happen next. And I can't wait to find out. And the only way I can find out what happens next is for me to write it. I start with a premise, an idea, a theory, a hypothesis, a curiosity about something, some little gems, little germs of a wonderful story, a Faustian bargain, a debut best-selling author, a woman who's juggling her career and her dreams and her family. And I type the words chapter 1, and then I think, okay, 99,000 words to go. Let's see what happens. It's a journey every day. And every day as an author, I ask myself, what does someone want and how far will they go to get it, and who's going to get in their way and why, and what will happen if they fail? That's what pushes me forward. Wow. On the page. But, I knew that Tessa would have a secret, but I didn't know what it was. I knew that Tessa had made a Faustian bargain, but I didn't know what it was. I knew that somebody would be a bad guy or a bad person or in general an antagonist, but I didn't know who they were. So when people say to me, talk about, I love the twists. I love all the twists in your book. Frida McFadden even said, it had twists that left me reeling, which made me reel with her praise. But, people say, those endings, you really surprised me.
I was completely surprised with the ending of this one. We won't spoil it for anybody listening. So you'll have to go and read, but it took a turn that I did not see coming.
Me either. I didn't know.
Well, I'm in good company then.
Honestly, I don't know the endings. Yeah. And that's difficult because I'm typing along and I'm thinking, this is a good story. I wonder what's going to happen. I'll keep going. I'll say what's going to happen next. This is so exciting. And about 4/5 of the way through, I think, okay, you're going to have to figure out how to wrap this puppy up now. What really happened and why. I'm all talking about only in my first draft. The first draft is a completely different situation from anything else. But in the first draft, I'm out in search of the story. I'm just trying to find out what happened. But at some point, you have to figure out what happened. You have to sort of cut bait at some point and decide who's bad and decide what the secret is and decide how it's going to be revealed and make it be logical, surprising but logical, surprising but inevitable. And not out of the clear blue. It has to be absolutely fair. And all of the clues have to be there. And I want the readers to say, I should have thought of that. I should have figured that out, but I never did. That's what I'm going for. And I know my readers are smart. And I know they're going to try to figure out what happened.
I try every time, and every time you best me. So
every time I don't know. And so the next time when you read my next book, and I hope you will,
of course I will.
when you're trying to guess you'll know that I don't know either. I honestly don't know. And when I figured out the end of all this could be yours, I was
Yes.
by myself in my study and I just stood up and applauded. I'm like, yes, you got this.
Yeah.
And I thought, sit down, Hank, you're by yourself. Just calm down a little
Well,
bit.
heck no. Celebrate every single thing you do. Yeah.
Yes, especially figuring out the end, since that is something that one must come up with.
Does that?
But when the end when the end coalesces
Mhm.
into being the thing that it just had to be, it has to be this way. And I want you to think, wow, yeah, that's exactly what should have happened.
Yes.
And, I want you to close the book and be happy that you read it. I want you to say, this was a really good book.
I think one of your other things is you want people to be like, yeah, I saw that movie, because it is written so well where you can see and visualize the things happening. And I will tell you, like, your books leave me thinking, because I'm thinking about, and you kind of see behind me, my bookshelves, a lot of those are signed, and realizing now, like, wow, what somebody signed taken out of context, what does that mean? Or like, is that an alibi because you're dating the place and the time, the date and the place of the location where it was signed? Just
No, that's exact. I was eyeing your books behind you. I'm trying to see what all the titles are. I'm lusting after all of those, Jen. They're quite amazing and beautifully organized.
Well, librarians, so they're all in alphabetical order by author's last name.
Come to my house and do mine.
I would love to. Yes,
mine are in no order whatsoever. But that's where you're so prescient, because that's where the idea of the book came from. I was at the Poison Pen bookstore, as a matter of fact, in Scottsdale. And I was signing books, and as we all do, with much delight. And I wrote in someone's book, so great to see you in Scottsdale. And I put the date, and I signed my name, and I put her name. And as I handed her her book, I thought, oh, I've just given someone an alibi. That's so funny.
So that's the nugget of the...
Yeah, that's exactly the way the book began. The way the book began in my head, that I had written a place and my name and her name and the date and the time, and anybody could, and it would prove that she was there. It was an alibi. And then I started thinking about all the other usually benign things, seemingly benign things that we all write in books. Thank you for a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for everything. You could take that book and say, you know what she meant by that. You hold up the book and say, you know what she meant by thank you for a wonderful evening. I mean, I've written in books. I've had books where my main character has a name. I'm just making this up, but let's say Jennifer, but it's not. Mm-hmm. Let's say
you're welcome to use it anytime.
Someone will say, "Can you write it to the real Jennifer?" And I would think, well, no, because you're not the inspiration for the main character, Sally or Sue or Mary or whoever it is. And someone in the book asks Tessa to sign the book she says, my name is Annabelle, the name of Tessa's main character. Can you sign my book to the real Annabelle?
Right.
And Tessa thinks, well, no, because if I write that, then you'll be able to take that book to whomever you want and say, see, this book is based on me. See, this book is, she wrote this book about me, and that would not be true. So I've come to realize, Jen, that really you can just write best wishes, and that's about the only thing that's absolutely safe to write in a book. So now I just write, here's your alibi.
There you
go. That's another thing that pointed me to this novel, is the sort of weaponization of book tour. About if you look at book tour through the prism of something that's potentially dangerous and potentially destructive and potentially deadly, so many things turn out to be kind of creepy, like the person who sits next to you in the airport who has your book, and they're looking at that book and they're looking at the picture on the back and they're looking at you, or the person who sits next to you on an airplane, or the person who comes to too many events, or, it's just can be very disconcerting and very upsetting. And that's why it makes a fun, fast-paced read, because it feels like real life.
It does. And there's so many layers in your books. And I think that's the other thing I appreciated. It's not just, a writer on book tour who may or may not have a stalker and dreading a question from the past, but she's juggling family, right? And then at one of the early stops in the book tour, she finds a locket with a picture in it in the drawer. And so then, of course, the post, or they'll forget you. And then that kind of ups the ante with the comments and the things that come through as well.
Well, you know, it's interesting because when I was writing the novel, I had Tessa. This is maybe chapter 3, not giving anything away.
No.
In chapter 3, I had Tessa in a hotel room. She's looking for the room service menu because she's starving, as we always are on the road, completely hungry. And she opens the nightstand drawer and she says, "Oh my gosh, what's that?" And then I thought, yeah, I wonder what that is. I didn't know what was in the drawer. And so I had to figure it out for the next, so the next day I sat down and figured out what was in the drawer. But I didn't know she was going to open the drawer, and I didn't know she was going to find something. And I certainly didn't know what it was going to be. And then I certainly didn't know that what she found was going to be absolutely pivotal for the rest of the book. And not only for the plot of the book, but to allow the readers to understand Tessa's disorientation and disequilibrium and her homesickness, and realize, to be able to articulate live on Instagram as she does when she's saying, "Can you help me find who this belongs to?" And then she starts imagining the woman, the mom, who left it behind, and how bereft she must feel by leaving this treasure behind, and why she would bring it with her, and how she would feel about it now, and how every woman feels, whether they're on the road or whether they're just at work, that they're neglecting their family, that they're neglecting their responsibilities, and that power and that pressure and that those stakes are just constantly in our hearts and in our brains all the time. And it was a way for me to allow Tessa, I mean, sort of technically, clinically, writerly, allow readers to feel what Tessa feels, this loss and this homesickness and this love of her family, tempered with the necessity that she is the breadwinner of the family and she's got to stay on the road.
Yeah, it's interesting. You used a word in that answer, imagines. And so that's the other thing that struck me in this book is the power of imagination, right? You talk about being able to have a character in your mind and hear them talking to you. Like you just said, you knew Tessa would open the drawer for room service, but you didn't know what she was going to find until the next day. That's your writer's imagination, which Tessa talks a little bit about when she's talking to readers. But at the same time, it's that power of imagination that makes her think things with her husband, only seeing him on a screen. So, that duality, right? Imagination can be a really good thing, except when, you're like, oh my God, that noise isn't right. Or is that person the one looking for me? Or unsettled and is a good way to explain how you feel as a reader.
What I did was I instantly took Tessa as far away from her family as I could get. So she would be in a completely different time zone from her family. So her life was on a completely different metabolism than her family's. And that often she was awake when her family was asleep and vice versa. And they were eating at different times and they were available at different times. So I made her be in as much a state of disequilibrium as I possibly could. Also added to that, as an author and as a reporter as well, but as an author, we're trained to play out a story and imagine the very worst possible things that could possibly happen, because that's what makes a good book, isn't it? Conflict and fear and uncertainty.
If I catastrophize, that just means I'm a writer that just hasn't written yet, right?
Exactly. Catastrophizing is what we do to write a book. And Tessa understands that. Tessa understands that even though she has a secret and even though she's fearful, she is not paranoid at all. She's just being logical. She's just trying to figure out and prepare and plan and not be surprised and be ready for whatever might happen. So people who don't understand the writer brain might think she's paranoid. She is not one bit paranoid. She's being authentically, genuinely, clinically fearful about what absolutely might happen. Also, in addition, she's a storyteller. So she can weave a marvelous, ingenious story about absolutely everything. The things that go bump in her house, or that the kitchen is a different color, or where is her husband. We can all imagine the worst possible thing. And our brains, our imaginations all work in different ways. It's so funny. When my husband goes on an errand or something, I'll say, "Okay, sweetheart, be careful." And Jonathan will say, "Of what? Of what?" And I can see the world as just full of every single, a million possibilities of terrible things that might happen that I can't even articulate. And he sees the world as just fine. He's just going to the drugstore. What could possibly happen? And I could tell you 10,000 things that could happen on the way to the
because
drugstore.
that's your imagination and writer's brain and commitment to storytelling.
Exactly. He's going to the drugstore and I'm making it into a good story, right?
That's exactly right. You have to say, like, as a writer, right, this is a cat and mouse. It's a thriller, constantly turning the pages, but they're little nuggets. Like one of my favorite lines in this book, the moon hung like a lingering guest.
Oh,
that's like one of, I highlight it. These are the little snippets I tuck in my pocket and I pull out and I read, later. Now when I see the moon, that's what I think, like, oh, just hanging there like a lingering guest.
Oh,
so fun stuff. So
and I have to say, talking about the writer brain and phrases like that, I don't know where those come from, Jen. I don't, this is not that she's pointing to her head, y'all. I don't know.
Right here.
It's like, sometimes I'm sitting at this very desk in my book and I'm just not really here. I'm in the book. I'm in the story so much that it doesn't feel like I'm actually typing words. It feels like something is going from my brain to the page and there's not really anything in between. And I'll tell you that, when I come back to my manuscript the next day and I read what I wrote the previous day, sometimes I'll think, I wrote that? Huh. I don't really remember writing that. And, Sue Grafton used to call that the magic, again, of the writer brain, that if you're in the zone, or if you're in the, in the presence of the muse, or, if your imagination is going, however you want to call it, there are days that things go on the page that I don't consciously think of. Now, I embrace that. And the thing that's so especially unusual about that is that you can't make that happen. You just have to allow it to happen. So I can't come in and sit here at this desk and say, okay, now I'm going to be in the zone. Here I go. That isn't how it works. But one of my favorite authors, Ellie Griffiths, I can't believe I'm taking advice from a fictional character, but one of my favorite authors, Ellie Griffiths, wrote a wonderful novel called The Stranger Diaries, which I know you've read, which I love. I love too. And one of her main characters is an English professor. And this English professor tells her students, the muse only comes when you're working. The muse only comes when you're working.
Yes, that's a great line.
It is. And I think about that. So I sit down at my desk. I know I'm going to try to do my 1,000 words a day. And some days it is tragically difficult. And some days the muse comes and out comes some surprise or some line that you love or some line that I can't believe that I wrote. And that's one of the things that's the fuel for me as a writer, is that I honestly don't know what's going to happen next. And I honestly don't know what words are going to emerge, or what story is going to emerge, or what a character will wind up wanting or doing or having or being or realizing. When I come, I don't start with a theme. The theme just emerges. And in the end, I think, oh, this is a book about empowerment. This is a book about family. This is a book about love of storytelling. Yeah. Who'd have thought? I had no idea when I started. And that's one of the joys of writing for me.
Well, it's so glad to hear. And it speaks to the, just keep showing up, right? If you show up and you're consistent, the more often you're showing up and working, the more often that muse or whatever the word is comes.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. If you let go of the book, you have to imagine that a writer is holding an entire book, let's say 100,000 words. You're holding a whole world, a whole imagined world of 100,000 words in your head the whole thing all the time, not just whatever page you're working on, and not just the blank pages, and not the draft that has come before, but the whole entity is in your head all the time. Right. So if you let that go, if you ignore it, it's going to deflate. It's going to vanish. It's just going to diminish. And so sometimes at night, when I'm getting ready to go upstairs and go to bed, I'll say to my husband, I'm just going to say goodnight to the book. I'm just going to say goodnight to the book. And I open my manuscript and I just be in that world for a minute. I just remind myself, here I am, here's this world, here's what's happened. I got this. And it's a way of keeping the story alive in my mind, even though I'm not working on it.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a question that a reader asked Tessa in your book, about the main character not liking, and Tessa's response was, do you have to really like the main character as a reader? And then I think, well, what is that like as a writer? If you are carrying this 100,000 word world in your brain, do you have to like the main character as you're writing them? As a reader,
or do I have to, or do my readers have to like her?
Readers, there are characters we love and characters we hate, but you as a writer, you spend so much time with them. I binge and I'm done in 2 sittings, right? But you spend a lot more than 2 days writing a book. Yeah. So do you have to like that main character that you're writing?
I have to be fascinated by her.
Okay.
I have to be compelled by her. I have to be superly interested in her, superly invested in her. Now, remember, I don't know whether somebody is actually good or bad. So, right. Even my main characters in some of my books, my main characters have turned out to be not the best people, because I don't know. So likability is not important to me as a reader or as an author. It's not important to me at all, that word likability. Relatability, that's important. Do I get what they're doing? Do I understand what they're doing? Do I understand their motivations? Even if I say, well, I wouldn't have done that. That seems dumb. Why don't you just call the police? I at least understand why they do what they do.
I think.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's right. I think Lisa Unger may have said it about, it's not the who done it, but the why done it. And I think that's what fascinates both readers and writers, that you're, as you say, find fascinating, but trying to understand why they did what they did. And we as readers are able to see that too, where you don't see it in some other art forms.
Yes. And so we're talking about real people with real goals and real passions and real dreams and real opportunities and real decisions. That's the other reason for that Pythagoras quote at the beginning, is that's what makes a novel, is the decisions that people make. When you're on the road to somewhere, metaphorically and geographically, when you're on the road somewhere, and there's an obstacle, the decision that you make when faced with that obstacle is what reveals your characteristics, your personality, your psychology, who you really are. Do you do the lovely, selfless, gorgeous, benevolent thing for the greater good? Or do you do the evil, self-centered, ugly, corrupt, illegal thing? And that's what telegraphs to the readers who the character is and whether you should be on the train with them, whether you should relate to them or root for them. And so when my characters make a decision, then their personality is revealed. It's revealed to me and it's revealed to the reader. And that's what makes a story, is what happens and what decisions does someone make. Yeah. And I think that's fascinating. And that was one of the reasons, again, for that quote at the beginning, because every choice will change your life.
Absolutely.
But we just don't know how the moment we make it. We just have to hope we're doing the right thing.
Right. I grew up with parents that said, you always have choices. You might not like your choices, but you always have choices, in that sense of agency, that, whatever you choose, and that changes the course of events, kind of like those old choose your adventure books that we read as kids, right? That you choose this, so this is what happens. You choose this is what happens. And everybody that we're interacting with in our life is doing the same exact thing. So how some people fall into our lives and out or whatever is really kind of neat. You just never know what's coming because of what choice somebody's making. So
And that's what makes a story. That's precisely what makes a story. That's precisely what makes us keep turning the pages.
Yes. Well, thank goodness that you make us keep turning the pages. I think you all should be like endorsed by cereal companies, so that's what people are, eating for dinner, because to cook and take time out and away from the page, just too difficult.
That's great. So, high compliment. Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome. So it's hard to believe that we're running out of time. I could talk to you the whole rest of the afternoon, and I know people would listen to you. So lucky to have been joined in conversation with multiple award-winning Hank Phillippi Ryan. So stories end. Final 5 questions. As a writer, what's the most unusual thing someone has asked you to sign or inscribe?
Oh, I don't know. I've had people, I obviously I sign bags and arms and library cards and other people's books.
Arms. I'm stuck on arms.
And I think, well, why would you want me to sign your arm? But okay. I mean, I think it was only because they didn't have a book. And I thought, well, okay, fine. But you're just going to take a shower and that's going to come right off. But people, all those weird requests are a sign of affection, I think. It's a sign of wanting a connection. And so fine with me. Nobody's ever gone way too far in places that we won't even discuss.
Yes.
I'm really happy with anything that anybody wants me to sign. It's fine. If I thought about it, now that I'm thinking about it in light of all this could be yours, I'll never sign anything again, but because it's too scary. I was
just thinking I'm going to treasure the ones that are behind me on the bookshelf, because now I know. Have you ever found anything in a hotel room? All the hotel rooms and book tours.
I have not so far, but I now look every time.
I think everybody's going to be looking in the drawer. I was looking for the room service menu, right?
And if you're lucky, you'll find a bathrobe and slippers that the hotel leaves. You realize on book tour what a joy that is. But no, my own book made me start looking in every nightstand drawer, I have to say.
Yes. Okay, so since you travel quite a bit, what is your best travel hack or something you never leave home without?
I never leave home without almonds, because almonds in a little plastic bag, almonds are great for breakfast, lunch, dinner. They're great with coffee. They're great with wine. They're great with Diet Coke. The almonds are amazingly good. I'm also a super packer, Jen. I am the best packer in the world.
This is, I need to learn.
I was just on book tour for 2.5 weeks. And I did not check a bag. I just had an overhead compartment bag. And I thought, what goes in that bag, what fits in that bag is going on tour, and everything else is staying home. So I am the queen of packers. If anybody wants any packing advice, I got it for you. Oh,
absolutely. Breakfast or no breakfast?
Oh, breakfast. I'm big on breakfast. Not big breakfast. But some days that the only reason I wake up is for that coffee and maybe a bagel or cinnamon toast or something like that. Not eggs and bacon and whatever else people have for breakfast. Not like that, but like that delicious toast, sometimes with peanut butter and delicious coffee. I can't live without coffee. I'm such a coffee devotee. It's kind of terrible, but I embrace that moment.
And then the final question, what song would you always include on a road trip playlist?
Oh, Magical Mystery Tour. Of course, the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour is coming to take you away. I sing that to myself every day in airports, and I am very grateful for that song.
That's terrific. So I want to say thank you to all of you listening, and a huge thank you to Hank Phillippi Ryan for joining me today. I think we can agree she has deservedly won the Emmys and Writing Awards. And if I could give her an award for being kind and generous, I would. This is Story to Count with Jen Jumba. To those who want to see who my next guests are, visit storiedaccount.com.